gentlemen, of our Southside Wellness Coalition. This evening, we have a special guest featured as part of our coalition meeting this month. I want to welcome to you Dr. Skyler Wells. She is a dedicated educator, researcher, and school leader with a passion for supporting children who have experienced adverse childhood experiences, otherwise known as ACEs. With a PhD in educational leadership and years of hands-on experience as both a classroom teacher and administrator, Dr. Wells has devoted her career to understanding the impact of trauma on learning and behavior. Dr. Wells believes schools are at the heart of the community and that by working together, families, educators, and neighbors can create safe, nurturing environments where every child has the opportunity to thrive. Her engaging presentations blend research with real-world practice, offering both insight and practical tools for anyone who wants to make a difference in the lives of children. If you all please, let's welcome Dr. Wells.
So it's really nice to see this many people here. Most of the time when I do a presentation, they're forced to be there by their school administrators. So thank you all for showing up. I'm not going to say everybody wasn't forced to be here, but yay. Tonight I'm going to present something that's very near and dear to my heart. I spent several years developing this research and tried to continue practicing it within our school divisions now. The name of the presentation is From Hurting to Hope, Building Safe Schools and Stronger Futures. You all should have a note card and pen at your desk. That's so fancy. Anyway, the hurt that troubled children create is never greater than the hurt that they feel. This is a quote that I want you to take into mind as we're going through the presentation. I try to keep this in my mind every day as I work with children. No matter how many times they may get on your nerves or display behaviors that are outside the realms of what you consider normal, what they're feeling inside is likely much greater than what they're creating inside those classrooms or in your day-to-day life. The study I conducted was a phenomenological study of resource parents' experiences providing for the educational needs of children with adverse childhood experiences. And I know that's a mouthful, so I'm going to break it down just a little bit. Phenomenological means an observable study. So I took my participants, I had them write for writing prompts. We did a personalized interview and we did a focus group with all participants in the study. Resource parents are anybody caring for a child that is not biologically their own. For this study's purposes, I did foster, adoptive, and kinship families. Kinship meaning people who are caring for their family members, whether that be their aunt, uncle, granddad, any of those individuals. Adverse childhood experiences will be explained on the next slide. And this study was conducted really based on my personal experience in the classroom. During my first year of teaching, I went in with the expectation that it would be one thing, and within that first day, I was proven wrong. My very first day of teaching, I had a child kick my toenail off, and he was throwing a fit and through a desk, and I just thought to myself, what have I gotten into? Later down the road, I had a child that came out of the bathroom with the shirt pulled up and he had slash marks all over his back, and I had to sit down with our counselor and come to find out one of his family members was beating him. So I came from an environment that was near close to perfect. Obviously I came from a family where my parents were still together and I was raised in a very good environment. So walking into this, I really didn't know how to handle it and I had to educate myself. And so that is exactly why I pursued a PhD and researched this. So this was my problem statement. The problem is that many resource parents with children who have ACEs cannot assist with the educational needs, thus leading to learning delays, classroom disruptions, and the likelihood of children not completing school, which is a very scary thought. So you have a note card at your desk, and this is not mandatory. For those of you at home, just keep a mental note, if you will. This may be triggering, so again, you're not required to participate, but the goal of this is for you just to keep in mind that children under the age of 18 years old are experiencing some of these things. While you were growing up during the first 18 years of your life, did a parent or adult in the household often or very often swear at you, insult you, put you down, or humiliate you, or act in a way that made you afraid that you might physically be hurt? If you answered yes to those questions, that's 1. Did a parent or adult in the household often or very often push, grab, slap, or throw something at you, or ever hit you so hard that you had marks or were injured? Again, if you answered yes to that, that's another point. Did an adult or person at least 5 years older than you touch or fondle you, or have you touch their body in any form of sexual way? If you answer yes to that, that's another point. Did you often or very often feel that no one in your family loved you or thought you were important or special, or your family didn't look out for each other, feel close to one another, or support each other? Did you often or very often feel that you didn't have enough to eat, had to wear dirty clothes, or had no one to protect you? Your parents were too drunk or high to take care of you or take you to the doctor if that was needed? Number 6, were your parents ever separated or divorced? Number 7, was your mother or stepmother often or very often pushed, grabbed, slapped, or had something thrown at her? Or sometimes, often, or very often, kicked, beaten, hit with a fist or something hard? Or ever repeatedly hit for a few minutes or threatened with a gun or knife? Number 8, did you live with anyone who was a problem drinker or alcoholic or used street drugs? Number 9, was a household member depressed or mentally ill, or did a household member attempt suicide? And number 10, did a household member go to prison? Now, if you were to add up all of those numbers that you gathered while you were taking this test, this would be your ACEs score. All of the participants in my study, their children had at least an ACE score of 4 or more, and the statistics coming up will show you the detrimental effects of that.
Did you let those people in real quick?
Yes.
No, I'm not, yeah. No, I ended up there. Everybody miss out.
It is noted that 1 in 3 children in the United States have experienced at least one adverse childhood experience. So, just kidding. It's not working. I'm not so fancy anymore. There we go. So this information, when conducting my study, was taken from the Northern Virginia Health Foundation. All of these are just some of the risks that are associated with trauma. When you have an ACE score from 0 to 4, you're 242% more likely to smoke, 357% more likely to experience depression, 222% more likely to become obese, 1,133% more likely to use injected drugs, 443% more likely to use illicit drugs, 298% more likely to contract an STD, 1,525% more likely to commit suicide or attempt suicide, and 555% more likely to develop alcoholism. The risks of the list of risks go on, especially if you have a score of 6 or more, and you're more likely to die 20 years younger than those who have an ACE score of 0. To accompany my study, I researched the methodology of the social learning theory conducted by Bandura. An analogy I like to use is when you're always learning by watching, and when you see somebody do something right, you're more likely to do so compared to somebody who's doing something wrong, and your brain files it away for later. Something I see on the daily is a child going to hit somebody, or they're saying words that you wouldn't think a child that age may hear. And they didn't learn that from nowhere. They're getting it from somewhere. So in the 1960s, they did a Bobo doll experiment, and it shows that children can learn aggressive behavior simply by watching others. And that may be at the home, that may be in somebody else's home. In addition, this study conducted children just simply watching abuse or aggression on TV. And that was also something that children internalized and then displayed in their day-to-day life. When Bandura conducted this study, he showed the aggressive behavior either by a model physically with the child in the room, or again by them watching it on a television. And then they put the child in a separate room and said, now I want you to play like you're playing at home. And that child would then go and hurt the physical things that they had in their hands. So it just proves that every little thing you do around a child, they are listening and watching. In the study, one of my participants, Wanda, explained that her child had been in 5 homes since being in the child welfare system, and each house was showing some form of different emotion and teaching that child how to regulate their behaviors differently. And not all foster homes, adoptive homes, are good homes. If you're in and out of 5 different houses, there's no telling what's going on inside of those. Oh wait, I didn't turn the slide. My bad. So these were my research questions. The one that's highlighted in yellow was my main central research question that I was looking to answer when I interviewed my participants. And that was, what was it like to be a resource parent that's caring for the educational needs of a child with ACEs? Under that category, I wanted to find out what the gaps are in the educational system. What are we missing? What can we do better? What challenges do these parents face when caring for the educational needs of these children? Obviously, if those children have been experiencing some form of adversity in the home, in their new home with the resource parent, that parent.
And they have not had any offers. Brad and I talked about every 3 or 4 days. They've had no offers on it, and I looked.
Sorry. Okay, moving on. So obviously, if they're experiencing adversity or have experienced adversity, their education really isn't at the forefront of their mind. And so resource parents are constantly having to manage their child's emotion and education at the same time. And we can all tell which one probably gets put on the back burner. And finally, I wanted to answer the question of what resources are necessary from schools and the community to assist children in resource care. So the research design that I used, I had 12 participants total. The minimum requirement was 8, but I felt like 12 was a good number to kind of give me a wide variety of parents and children that they had in their household. Parents had children ranging from their pre-K age through 12th grade. All of them attended a rural Virginia school district. Participants were gathered via the convenient sampling and snowball method, meaning I posted it on social media and just hope and prayed that somebody was willing to do my study. And then when they got in the room and we finished, I'm like, hey, do you have a friend that has, children? So I had to really pull strings to get participants. But after I conducted the study, I made a promise to those participants that I would do everything in my power to tell their story through their lens with protecting their information. The information was gathered again through writing prompts, interviews, and focus groups. I used that data and triangulated it to create a unified statement of the phenomena. I had 2 participants that were kinship parents, 4 participants that were foster parents, and 1 adoptive parent. 5 participants were foster and adoptive parents, meaning they had adopted a child but were still fostering children at the same time. All of the participants' names were changed. I used pseudonyms. I actually used all of my grandparents' names, so that's just a special little piece that I have also included in here. On this chart here, you can see the grade level that the child was in and if they had multiple children. and of course, what type of parent they were. So anytime I present the study, I do have to say that I advocate any of the biases that I had using a reflective journal. Anytime I interviewed a participant, read their writing prompts, or conducted a focus group, if I had any form of bias during it, I had to write it down and just kind of put it to the side so that I conducted a ethically right study. Writing prompts were analyzed through the participants' writing. I'm not saying that I used word for word everything that the participant said, but I highlighted and horizontalized all the similarities and ensured they were grouped through a coding process. And the triangulation was done through interviews, focus groups, and writing prompts. So I promise you, we're getting to the good stuff. This is the results of the study. I found that only 8% of the children came from homes without substance abuse. So that means that the rest had substance abuse in their life before they were 18 years old. The majority of the children that came into their families or foster care were below the age of 6 years old. So they were exposed to some form of drug, alcohol, substance abuse of some sort prior to going into the family's homes. 75% of the children had some form of special need, and only 25% did not. The highlighting and horizontally coding that I used is on the board, and to answer the certain research questions, which you'll see on the next slide. So what I was able to gather from the research shows the resource parent challenges, and under that category fits the children with special needs, communication, and the routine. There are gaps in the educational system. One of the main gaps is the lack of ACEs training and little parental support. And finally, I was able to discover what resources are needed for the future, whether that be educational resources, social services resources, and what we need in a rural location in Virginia. So to start off with resource parent challenges, obviously being a resource parent is a never-ending job. You have children that come into the home and you think that it's just part of your 9-to-5 job and you take care of their needs during the day and everybody gets to sleep at night. A lot of my participants were up all throughout the night, whether that be because their child was abused at night and they're just screaming, or they're scared of the dark because bad things happen to them in the dark. I think that a lot of participants thought that when they were signing up to be a foster parent, or they took in one of their family members, that it was just going to be, in a sense, easy, that they were getting a child and they were just going to fill this child with love. But some children with love, it scares them because they're not used to it. And you can fill somebody with all the love in the world, but if they're not receptive to it just because of their personal boundaries, they're not going to. Michael stated that in some ways we grieve that our expectations aren't reality, but we're also trying to form more realistic expectations moving forward. Michael had 2 children in the house with him. He had a 7-year-old and a 5-year-old at the time, and both of those children came into the care as infants. And so him and his wife thought that they were going to the hospital to pick up these babies and everything was going to be okay, but the mother was using drugs while the baby was in utero and also outside. So the baby actually had narcotics in his system as he was going through the first few days of his life. 75% of resource parent participants had a child with some form of special need. Again, going back to the fact that parents went and, picked up these children and not necessarily thought that it was going to be an easy road, but who would have thought that this child coming to my house, has all these specialized needs that I don't know how to take care of. And then I take them to school and, people at the table all have some form of degree to help that child, but I'm at home and I have nothing. So that was very hard to hear. And communication is just essential for children with adverse childhood experiences. I know that a lot of teachers don't necessarily have the experience or training for ACEs. And so when they're communicating with parents, oh, Johnny did this today and he was really bad. And I hear that term a lot. That kid is just really bad. Are they bad, or you just don't know how to handle the bad? Schools having a routine is a must for resource children. Consistency is key. Something that all participants said is having a daily routine is what really kept them going. If a child had a half a day at school or another child that they really took to wasn't there, they weren't able to have a normal routine that day. And you can really tell when a child in your classroom is off. And it's just really important as educators to take a moment and even pull that child to the side. Hey, is there anything I could do to make your day a little bit better? Just checking in with that child makes a massive difference. Diana stated in my focus group that my day consists of a lot of routines. We have to have routines in this house or we will not work. And all participants in that focus group agreed. I could probably talk about this all day long, and it's not a certain school system that's doing anything wrong. I just think it's a lack of education, and we just have to be extremely receptive to learning the differences in our children with ACEs versus a child just acting out. Participants' experiences with the educational system varied based on their child and the teacher's willingness to learn about ACEs. You have some teachers that are like, I'm a lifelong learner. And then you have teachers that are like, I've been doing this for 30 years and I don't really care what you have to say. Peggy explained that if I raise my voice at all, shut the door or shut the lights off, the child immediately shuts down and teachers just don't seem to get it. This participant's story was absolutely heartbreaking, and this is a participant that our educational system failed dramatically. She had a child, of course, that if you shut the lights off, really bad things happen to that child. And the teacher consistently would turn the lights off and then freak out and call administration when the child was acting out. Well, the child was acting out because it was a trigger for him. So as an educator, please just keep in mind those triggers that children have. All resource parents needed some form of support. Families needed counseling. They needed doctors to assist with disabilities and assistance transferring schools, but often no services were provided. They were very much so overlooked. When I say transferring schools, I had several participants who got foster children from other counties, and when they were trying to come into different school districts in which they lived, it was pretty much like, here you go, best of luck figuring it out. And with IEPs and medical needs and all of those things, nobody's really helpful in trying to figure out how to get those children into the school systems successfully. Jackie shared that I've seen children over the years that the system just seems to fail. And finally, resources needed for the future. Parents who had academically successful children often needed social emotional support or counseling from the school. People often think just because a child is brilliant doesn't mean or means that they don't need emotional support. And that has time and time again just proven not to be true. I had several participants who had children that were very bright, but then when they got home, they completely shut down, locked themselves in the room, and they would reach out to the school system and say, like, how was their day? While their day was great, they often needed just a simple counsel check-in just to see how they were doing throughout the day and allow them to speak out their emotions. Resource parents often felt alone and believed that the social services and school systems should communicate. So going back to when you're transferring children from different schools and school districts, it would be a lot easier for social services to communicate with the school. Hey, we have this child, they're going into this home. Here's a little bit of background of what's going on and how you can support this family better. Many parents had to constantly advocate for their child to receive services, and for families that have never really experienced having children in resource care, this can be really hard. They don't know who to reach out to. They may not even know the school administrator, and they don't know how to communicate with them. All parents needed assistance from social services in some capacity. Jane stated that if there are resources out there to help parents, maybe instead of letting them figure it out themselves, have them readily available. And this honestly hit hard, especially now being an administrator. I feel like I can do more than I used to just as a classroom teacher or a specialist, because I'm able to reach the child when they get there, but not all the times do we know where they're coming from or what they experienced. The rural location did impact the ability for some parents to provide for their children, especially those with astronomical emotional needs and special education needs. There were many children that came from drug families, and their needs really surpassed anything that we had resources for in our area. So these were really the answers to the research questions. For the first one, what was it like to be a resource parent caring for a child with educational needs with ACEs? The theme suggests that resource parents are very overwhelmed in their day-to-day duties and that they do not receive the support that they need to adequately provide for their children. For the first sub question, what do resource parents face educationally, and what do they need to be academically successful? Resource parents face educational challenges regarding preparing their children for educational success, and a lot of that stemmed from the fact that they also needed social emotional assistance as well. For the next question, sub-question, the gaps in the educational system, according to the resource parent, consist of classroom sizes, accommodations, and communication with social services. Many parents said that the classroom sizes were so overwhelming that their child's needs really weren't necessarily met to the best of educators' ability. And a lot of that is out of, building's hands. It's more so at the central office and state levels, but honestly, any teacher could tell you their class is too big. I mean, I would love just having 8 kids in a classroom, and research proves that that's an adequate number. Finally, how does the experience of being a resource parent shape the perception of what educational resources are deemed necessary from schools and the community? Resource parents deem social emotional learning, social services communication, and resources for rural communities necessary for their children with adverse childhood experiences. Finally, how can you help? Building relationships is probably something that every administrator tells you to do, and it probably makes you roll your eyes. But I can tell you, reaching out to your parents for more than just, hey, so-and-so did this today, making positive phone calls has honestly changed the way I communicate with parents. For any form of disciplinary action I do as an administrator, if I can find one good thing that child is doing a week or 2 later, I'm going to call that parent and say, guess what they did? I'm so proud of them. And it changes that relationship with that parent tremendously. Get to know your local resources, such as Southside Behavioral Health or your social services system. Having a relationship with these people and having them in your back pocket is honestly one of the best things you can do as an educator. I can't tell you the number of times I've had to call. I would say Jamie King has a great relationship with Keenan, and I have a situation where I need to reach out to either of them, and they instantly get me the resources I need for a child that I may have. Learning about adverse childhood experiences, doing the very best I can to ensure that every single school in my area has access to ACEs training. And I honestly think that it should be mandatory. And if I can make that happen, I'm going to. And those of you that know me know that I will. Learn de-escalation strategies. It's really hard to look and see in classrooms a teacher just frantically yelling at their students or not getting on the level of a child. And don't get me wrong, that has been something that I've struggled with, because sometimes I get hit when I get down on that level. But getting down on their level and grabbing their little hands and just saying, hey, I'm here for you, let's breathe together, it changes the dynamic tremendously. And finally, be understanding with your resource families. I have heard a lot, well, they live it with grandma or aunt or uncle, and they don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're doing, and they need your help. I'm not saying they've never been a parent before, but it's probably been a pretty long time since they have been a parent. And especially in today's time, they need some grace, understanding, and resources if you have them available. Respond to the need, not react to the behavior. Again, going into classrooms almost daily, you know, it's hard sometimes. I get it. You've got a classroom of 20+ kids. This one kid's tearing up your room. Sometimes turning your head can be your best friend because you're not giving that attention where they want it, which is the negativity. Instead, phone your counselor, administrator, somebody to remove that child from the setting and actually get them what they need instead of reacting to the specific behavior that they're giving you at that time. 6 de-escalation strategies that I try to do on the daily. Number one, remember the art of breathing. At first, I will say Kelly Colgate was my school counselor from the day I stepped foot into my first job in education. And she did yoga and breathing exercises. And at first I'm like, everybody breathes. What are we talking about? And she would do this thing with the children where she would have them breathe in, pop a balloon, and then bring it down. And it really allowed students to do a big, deep breath and breathe out. And there's a lot of times I have to do this myself just to regulate and get on a very calm level. Number two, identify the reason. Obviously, the child is acting out for a reason, and we want to discover that so we can provide the best resources. Reach out for support, whether that be DSS, a school counselor, any of our resources at Southside Behavioral Health. Number four is something I used to really have a hard time with, but now I want my presence to be calming for people. And that's something I've really strived to do, especially in the last few years. If I'm heightened, everybody else is going to be heightened, and especially any administrators out there, if you're walking into a room, now I walk fast, but if you walk into a room and you're just like, what is going on? It's not going to be as effective as walking in the room. Hey guys, like, how can I help? Let's take a deep breath together. It just really changes the mindset. Number five is always having a plan in mind. You may walk into a room and everything be going wrong and you're just as calm as you can be, and it's still going to go bad. You've got to have a room, either plan to get that child out of the room, or have somebody have your back enough to take over the class and you help that child get out of the classroom. And number six is always involve your administrators, just so that they know what's going on. And there may be a day as a teacher you may not be there, or whatever the case may be. Your administrators are going to have your back, but they also have to know about the situation. And finally, thank you for taking the time out of your night to listen to me. I know that this is a very important topic to me, but I also can hope that it's going to become an important topic to you. Those of you that are listening online and want to get your professional development points, just scan the QR code with your phone, and I'm going to email you a certificate within the next 24 hours.